Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next City of Echoes chapter analysis video. This one's going to be for chapter 21 and 22. So I'll once again mention I do have YouTube channel membership and Patreon available if you'd like to help support the channel. And also if you come in at the higher tier, you'll gain early access to videos in this series. But yeah, we'll jump in here with 21. So of course, where we left off, it is Juan training Jin on how to do the kind of specific, kind of delicate earthbending technique for how to open the kind of earthbending specific lock as part of the training mission that she's going on with Smellerby and Longshot. So they've kind of put their kind of hands together. He's trying to guide her through this, and it's a somewhat kind of like intimate kind of situation they've kind of found themselves in here. But he's guiding her through the kind of process of like, this is the movement, this is how smooth you kind of need to be to do this because it is a delicate movement. And she's not used to this because there's an interesting point here at the start where she describes how different in a way his controlled, precise bending is compared to the training she basically got from her mother. It says here, it's not quite like the lessons that my mother taught me. When the earth moves for her, it groans and grumbles, defying the pull of gravity, eventually succumbing to her inner strength. When he calls, the jade glides at his whim, floating through the air without so much of a wobble, with precision. I really like that idea between, you know, the two approaches you can kind of have to earthbending. One is the kind of very power focused type dynamic. The other one is the very precise one, and the kind of interesting dynamic there. It really kind of calls back to a certain degree, as if you've read the other novels, to sort of, I suppose, the Kyoshi and kind of Yoon dynamic, especially like early Yoon, where like he's a really good earthbender, but precision is where he's at his absolute best. Whereas, of course, Kyoshi is more of the blunt instrument, especially in the early kind of sections of those books. And that's kind of like the difference overall. And if you have both, you're in the top tier of kind of bending, of course. That's what really kind of distinguishes them, of course. Interestingly, Juan then goes into the idea of, in his head, this is what he's kind of thinking about. This is how he goes about doing his precision earthbending. Like he says, it's almost like a song, and asks her to remember kind of lessons from school that they learned about, like melodies. That's how he does it. And she's kind of like, I think music is kind of my worst subject. That might not work for me. And it kind of helps, but it's not really the exact approach for her. Then she's kind of beginning to realize that, like, oh, this is actually sort of similar to like pastries and the baking process, and the movement that I'm doing here is like pulling the dough in my hands, stretching it out, and that's what works for her. And I just like that interesting idea that theoretically a lot of benders have that kind of almost approach in their head. Some of them see it like almost music to make it work kind of nicely for them. Other people do it like kind of baking. It kind of reminds me of, if you ever read like the High Republic, some of the stuff from Star Wars, those novels. You get the idea of like some people sensing the Force as like a song of the Force, and so others perceive it in different ways. That kind of almost the idea here, which is kind of interesting. I don't think we've really heard a lot of this stuff exactly explained like that before. So there is that. But yeah, she gets it. He catches my hand in his. The jade pendants cold between our joined palms, warming slowly at our body heat. Just remember that feeling, he says. And I'm caught in his gaze again, in the sincerity of it, like he truly believed in me and that I could do it all this time. Someone then comes in, Smellerby and Longshot, and they're like, we're ready. And the two of them like immediately jump back from each other, as if they're kind of like embarrassed to be seen, technically kind of like holding each other's hands. And she then interprets the fact that he very quickly kind of tries to move away from this as, it was just a demonstration, nothing more. I must have imagined our closeness. Even though she also pulled back the second they kind of came in. And it's kind of leaning into that idea of like she continues to almost like you see the worst maybe in some of his actions and not kind of have as much kind of faith in him. Even though I think this is kind of consistent with his character, is that he's a relatively confident character overall, but there is a sense of like embarrassment surrounding Jin, which I think maybe speaks to the fact that he's maybe always liked her to a certain degree, and there is an awkwardness there. But we'll move on. But certainly the first moment you would say is like kind of like inherently romantic tease, because the two of them are holding hands, get close, and back away when people come into the room. But yeah, then the mission starts, because Melody and Longshot are like, we found a way in. They go outside and they find the setup of like, okay, again, they're going up to the 3rd floor of this place. How are we getting up there? Pretty simple. Longshot has fired an arrow up. There's a rope attached, and they're going to use that basically to get up there. They have to time it correctly because there are guard patrols, but they're basically kind of ready to go overall. So yeah, Jin is kind of being brought up the rope initially. Longshot's kind of helping her up. She's then like, wait, Smellerby, how are you going to get up if we have to do this really, really quickly? And she's just like, I'll get up there faster than you can. She puts her knife in her mouth and basically just kind of like Spider-Man, Spider-Cat as they describe it here, crawls up the side of the building, really carefully, kind of showing how kind of agile she is. She's finding all the little kind of indents in the wall, making her way up, using the knife at certain points to make her own indents to get up as quick as possible. But yeah, she's up there super fast, kind of showing Smellerby's skill and agility, that she's done stuff like this before. So they all make their way into the room, which again is in the kind of flower kind of area, of course, and everything has flowers on it in here. It's just such a crazy fancy room. They're all taken aback by how over the top it is. She is known as the Rose, I guess, which helps to explain a bunch of things, but that's the idea. So they look around for the painting of the koi fish, which behind it is meant to be the kind of fancy earthbending lock mechanism. But behind it, it seems to just be a wall of smooth stone. There doesn't seem to be anything there. They panic a little bit. It seems like they're running out of time. The call, that is their warning of basically being discovered soon. The trill of a bird comes in. So they have to be really, really quick. She then rushes over to the wall, gets up close to it, and is just like, okay, earthbending, let me try to sense if there is anything going on there. Is there like a hollowness here? And she finally is able to sense it and realize that, oh, there are 2 circles, but it's like tiny indentations, almost just like kind of like hand placement markers. And this is where she has to do the kind of earthbending from. And so she's able to do what she kind of was thought by Xuan, and yes, she activates the mechanism. It opens. There's a little bit of a final twist here in terms of like they don't have much time. There's a few things in here. What is the item that we have to take? There's a stack of gold bars, but then there's also this kind of fancy fan in the room. But then Jin remembers that what they were told about the mission was that the thing that they need to get back is like a personal item. So yeah, it's probably the fan over the stack of gold bars. That's to a certain degree part of the test as well. So they quickly grab that and make their way out. They're really running out of time as the kind of guards pretty much arrive here. And what basically happens is that Smellerby pretty much just like attaches the rope to herself, kind of like grabs Jin, and they kind of like dive off the top of the roof. And Jin thinks she's going to be like killed here, jumping off the roof. But as we immediately transition into the next chapter, Smellerby knows what she's doing. She kind of, I don't know what you call it, like repels or kind of like abseils down, whatever. She knows what she's doing with the rope and the side of the wall, and she gets Jin down. They do have to make a run from the guards because they're kind of like right there. But there is a bit of a crowd outside, so they manage to kind of lose them in the crowd a little bit. But this is where Jin and her better knowledge of Ba Sing Se comes into play, and she's able to realize that like, oh, this is where we are. If we go over here, then there's a bunch of kind of like pathways down where like we could really lose them. So she guides them in the right direction here. And they pop up after going through some of these kind of like stairs and steps out on one of the market streets, and they're just in with the crowd. So they go up to one of the people to get some food, and it's Young Crow, who was mentioned before. He's the cabbage bun salesman. So yeah, she goes up and is like, 3 please, 1 for me, 2 for my friends here. And you can see that this is where like Jin maybe comes into her own a little bit more. Smellerby and Longshot are both a little bit more kind of like standoffish with everyone. But she gives them the buns. They really, really like it. Young Crow does mention, I'm sorry to hear about Susu. She'll come home in time is what Jin says. But yeah, they're loving the cabbage bun. They really do like it. Longshot nods in agreement, of course. Interestingly, there's maybe a slight kind of editing error here where like they mention Longshot's name a few times, but then just in this sentence, it's long hyphen shot rather than just Longshot as like one word, which is what his name actually is. I think it's one of the only times in the book it's like that. I suppose it doesn't really matter too much. It's purely just, hey, delete that hyphen as a just to be accurate to what his name actually is. But yeah, the food in Ba Sing Se is actually good. That's the takeaway from all of this. They do kind of chat a little bit about how even though she knows the city a little bit better after 3 years, she can still get lost herself in all of this, but it's worked out kind of well here. So they kind of separate to a certain degree at this point and realize that, like, okay, it's no rush to immediately kind of finish the mission. We'll go back to the bamboo house in the morning, basically, when everything's kind of calmer, because it might be a bit of a mistake to try and do it right now. Before they leave, Smellerbee does go up to Jin and is just like, you know, you liked it, didn't you? You liked what we did tonight. The thrill of being somewhere we're not supposed to be. And the even bigger thrill of running away. You had fun, admit it. And in Jin's head, she's just kind of like, actually, yeah, I did. I've never done anything like that before. I didn't think I was capable of it. And in her head, Jin is thinking about kind of like, this is her opinion on Smellerbee. This strange girl with her stranger name and even stranger mannerisms. But I admire her confidence, her swagger, the way she's so different from all the other girls I've met before. The same quality that I recognized in Susu. The same quality I hope to find in myself one day. So nice that she sees the kind of confidence in Smellerbee there. But yeah, then there's a fun dynamic between Smellerbee and Longshot where she turns to Longshot and is just like, I told you, pay up. Longshot just flicks the coin at Smellerbee. He thought that you'd be too scared to do it and freeze under the pressure. I believed in you though. And the two of them kind of leave into the crowd at that point. And yeah, the point here is that Jin did it. She's not just able to do the deliveries, the kind of slightly more casual part of this. She was doing the action side of this as well. And she actually quite liked it. Interesting that there's that potential there with her. She does think to herself at the end of this, though, like, I wonder what Chuan would have thought if he was here to see me. You know, would he have bet against me or for me? But I think in her head, she's probably thinking he might have bet against her. But I think we know enough about the character now to probably actually know that he probably would bet in her favor, I think. So it's an interesting one. But we go into the second half of this chapter here. And yeah. They go back to deliver the package, basically, deliver the item. She meets up with Smellerbee and Longshot again, and they walk in. There's a whole check of, like, you know, they take the weapons from Smellerbee and Longshot, the bow and the knives and stuff like that. Remember your place. You will address them as Patron Wu. This is the singer. Note they do have the they, them pronouns here. So I guess this is a non-binary character here, Patron Wu, the singer. Interesting character from what we get from this scene and kind of like going on. But yes, so they are introduced by the guard. Here are the new initiates, of course. The description of this character is, the first thing I noticed about Patron Wu is their artfully drawn brows that arc above and accent their dark eyes. There's a sharp beauty about them in the swan-like grace of their neck and the elegant symmetry of their features. Even their movements are languid and lovely, like watching a sculpture come to life. And again, the whole point is that, like, this character is the most renowned performer in Ba Sing Se. So, of course, they're striking, I suppose, is the idea here. So you've done it then. Come, bring it to me. And, yeah, Jin doesn't know what to do, so it's just kind of like, here? Like, I didn't look at it. Someone thought you well. What is your name? My name is Jin. And then we see that, like, obviously, again, it's a fan. Immediately, it's opened up with, like, practiced ease, and from Jin's perspective, they've just opened up this kind of like warrior fan, and again, it's pointed at Jin's throat. So there's this kind of like cliffhanger ending to this chapter where it's like, oh no, the other leader of the Silver Fangs has, you know, shown themselves to be villainous in some way. it's another one of these situations where it's a bit of a fake out cliffhanger, where, like, in the same way with Onsumi from before, Patron Wu is also like, there's nothing really to this. Just a little bit of kind of showing off to create tension. And I get why they do it, of course, because they're trying to get across the idea like there is some tension in this kind of criminal enterprise. But I think everything else they've told us about the Silver Fangs is that it's not that type of criminal enterprise. Like, it is more, you know, there's honor to it here. So the tease of the, you know, they're actually threatening if they had to, if something truly went wrong, if they actually thought the trainees were going to betray them. I guess the idea here is that, yeah, the leaders are capable of taking people out, like, if required, is sort of more of the idea. But in this situation, like, Jin doesn't really need to worry overall. But Patron Wu does say, yeah, you didn't open it. Just because, of course, oh, that's why you're so shocked by it as it's opened and it looks like an actual weapon. Smellerby and Longshot are also surprised. So that is where the chapter comes to an end. And I think outside of the second kind of fake out in a row with the leader of the Silver Fangs, the chapter overall is, I think, really, really good. Some of the stuff from the first chapter that we're covering here, the earthbending descriptions and the approaches that they take to earthbending, is actually really nicely described. The actual mission itself is rather simple in execution in terms of the way it actually happens, but it's a nice first kind of training mission kind of for them that they just barely make it out of. And it's not that Jin kind of like stumbles her way through it. She's actually quite competent on the mission and impresses kind of Smellerby and Longshot. So that's kind of cool here as well, as some of the earlier setup kind of like teasing that, okay, things are, the dynamic between Jin and Chuan is beginning to evolve a little bit, as we kind of see as well. So things are coming together quite nicely here, and we'll see in the next chapters that, okay, the training has absolutely been a success. But yeah, in the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on chapter 21 and 22. But that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.